Alright. Just looking over 3A2 quickly. Trying to see what went wrong for Dubin in this game. Might just be that poor sheep was having a great day. Did end up going 3 for 3. Right away, definitely noticing a lot of metal heavy areas, which are interesting. Nomad not a thing. Scavenger potentially a thing. I'd be pretty tempted by a scavenger, honestly. Silicon would be a problem, but aluminum's right there. You have the ice, you have the carbon, you get into the fuel easily. That would be nice. And that also leads to a natural transition into chems a bit later. We'll just see where everyone ends up founding. Worst case scenario, you end up with some sort of a lead on ice and basalt. Or a scientist, really. So Zekris gets the nice scavenger spot he found first. Sophie thinks this says science. Guess that's okay. Don't have to worry about basalt right away. You have a bunch of iron. I wonder about the founding exactly. There might have been some iron. No, there was no iron crushed. So it should be fine. Normally not having the silicon access isn't great, but glass starting half price makes that a bit better. Dubin going for a basalt found. Also has some uranium. And I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of this relative to some of the other founds. Also poor sheep, I'm not a huge fan of that found. So I mean, you could pretty easily found a little further to the south and start on iron instead of starting on basalt. And that's just so much faster. 20 seconds for the steel mills. But, well, should be fine. Yeah, Sophie going for that steel is nice. Going to get into that market first. Really make a dent in that price. Dubin did found last, so makes some sense.
The black market is online.
Yeah, there weren't really any other spots on the other side of the map, unless you wanted to go scavenger, but then you're still light on ice, so I think that's a reasonable found.
HQ has been upgraded.
A scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Could have potentially gone around here instead, but I guess there's no real benefit to that. Maybe down here. No, still no ice. Yeah, that's probably the best you do when you're founding last. I'm not so sure about that fifth steel mill. Fourth steel mill.
HQ has been upgraded.
I guess there's no great thing to go for instead. Okay, so he's waiting to buy another claim. Which is fine.
The black market is open for business.
What are you gonna do with that claim? Ion collector right away. Yeah. This is extraordinarily expensive. And also Zekris was in the ion collectors first, and Sophie's an ion collector, so this just isn't gonna pay off at all. I think it might have worked out much better too, yeah. Just go for these nuclear. Ignore these, that's a large investment in carbon. It's really helping out Zekris. See, hopefully you pick up Goon here. And poor sheep also going for that power. On the basalt, interestingly, I would have preferred having the nuclear on this ice uranium. But again, not a big deal.
The black market is online.
Also not a huge fan of this glass. I mean, glass is literally just $75. And you don't have silicon. Okay, we canceled it. And yeah, fuel is completely and utterly dead.
A scientific HQ has
Okay,
been upgraded.
this transition does make sense though. I would have liked to see a small buy into fuel if you're going to be doing that, especially since Sophie also transitions out there. So fuel is definitely going to rise between the garages, chems, and 2 people in water. 3 people in water now. I'm also just not sure water was the right choice, but I guess there aren't really many options that
A
work.
scavenger HQ has been upgraded. The black market is open for business.
I'm also kind of amazed that no one ever tried to shut these nuclear plants down, but it worked out. I'm not so sure about this third water processor. Not... okay. I mean, again, fuel is very much going to be on its way up. And beyond that, water is really cheap. I would rather have seen, like, just 2 farms. These just aren't gonna do anything. I guess one thing they sort of do, they cover some power. You could probably transition the nuclear into farms if you wanted. Or, okay. Another transition out of water. Again, water's so cheap, you can probably expect more people transition out of water. Buying into water, if you're gonna do that full transition, would be a good idea. Even though some of it does get eaten up by debt.
The black market is online.
I also do wonder about taking that carbon. Carbon is expensive, but at that point Sophie already had that 1 low, and Poor Sheep had the medium, and Zekris had a ton. I think carbon will stick high for a bit longer and will be useful to have, but not sure 2 tiles on HQ3 is the right time and right amount of commitment. At this point, sitting on a lot of food. Poor Sheep is about to have some online, hopefully sell out. We shall see. It's a weird mutiny by Sophie here. Could pretty easily have taken this medium instead and gotten some nice adjacency. Of course, this hurts Zekris more. Maybe that's just what's more important. Zekris does have a nice lead. Which isn't surprising. Zekris' spot was very nice. Between having a very strong hold over carbon, with ions and chems being key resources. Liquid batteries, very nice. What are you doing now, Dubin?
The black market
Besides
is
kind of
open
lagging
for
behind.
HQ has been upgraded.
Part of the lagging behind is because I guess you've bought a lot of claims. 3. Which isn't really many fewer than more than Zekris. Although you also found it last, so another chunk of claims your way. Again, moving into glass, I'm just not very comfortable with that.
A scavenger HQ has been upgraded.
Thing is, there's no real reason to move into glass here of all places. You could pretty easily put 1 glass on basalt and 1 glass off. You still get your 2 glass with some adjacency, but one of them ends up not consuming this expensive silicon. That's only going to get worse because no one's really collecting silicon. Again, you are all scientists, so no one's really going into basalt platforms. And Poor Sheep's going to crowd you out of this market real fast. I guess you're going to basalt platforms now, but still feels worse than having glass there.
The black market is online.
Glass almost dead already. And these nuclear plants, I mean, I get the idea. A lot of times it's so easy to lose track of power if you transition out, but they're just dead tiles for so long this game, and so many players are doing that. Or Sheep even going superconductor for his dead nuclear power. Very weird. Okay, now you're doing that transition.
Scientific HQ has
I'm
been
not
upgraded.
I'm not really a fan of electronics in particular. Okay, food is better.
Time to start improving.
I think food or
everything.
chems are the right choice. Especially since you do have this optimization center up, you are going to need the chems. Again, a wholesale transition out of water when you are going to be using water. I feel like this is a pretty common theme this game.
The black market is open for
Pretty
business.
much just making sure that you're not going to be able to stay in markets for very long. All that said, you are not in a terrible position. I don't understand the buy into Sophie. Okay, you sold right back out. Because you're nowhere close to being able to even credibly threaten anyone. Like, if you are going to buy into anyone, you buy into Zekris, force him to defend, but he's already doing that himself, so probably not a big deal. At this point, I think everyone's just been buying claims. Yeah, very few freezes have been used. One each from Sheep and Sophie. I can't tell where they are on because that's bugged. But yeah, Zekris has been allowed to get away with a whole lot this game. I know Poor Sheep eventually wins, but well, I guess I'll have to just see why that happens. Assault platform's still doing well, and yeah. You transitioned out of water, now you transitioned right back in. Water's ridiculous. This was predictable. The other thing I'd comment on is that I think you've had autosell on for fuel all game long. And for large parts of the game, it's definitely the right move, but I feel like there's a lot of room to stockpile fuel on IO, even if the price is going down.
Scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Maybe once the price is below like 40 or something. At some point people will start to look to transition out, and then you'll be able to take advantage of those price spikes. Obviously that's something I neglect to do all the time, so I shouldn't criticize, but shouldn't criticize too sharply at least. But it is worth noting.
Congratulations.
At this point, basalt platforms are still okay. They're doing decent stuff with silicon at the very least.
The black
But
market is online.
I think I'd rather just have steel. Steel is, I think, just straight up better. Yeah. And it's also just a lot more useful for you to have the steel. You're gonna build steel outside, which I guess is fine with iron as cheap as it is. It is a bit of an awkward tile though. Eventually, if you do transition these buildings, this would probably have to be a special building, or I guess a not basalt scientific building that doesn't take advantage. Which, I mean, is something I brought up before as usable, but I'd really just rather get rid of the basalt. Now you're starting to buy into Zekris, which, again, you're just not in a position to actually finish the buy in any reasonable amount of time. Zekris isn't that deeply in debt, but just getting into this fight right away doesn't feel worthwhile. Zekris has a lot of nice patents. He isn't really
Market is open for business.
going to fall out of it if he has to put a lot of money into stock right now. He also has the optimization center up, so it's 2 optimizations to a bunch of patents and 1 optimization center, which doesn't feel like enough of a lead for you to be trying to push quite yet. Meanwhile, poor Sheep is getting this space elevator up, which, I mean, you can't really tell because of holograms, but is something to be aware of. I think prices just aren't quite high enough this game for you to sustain this push and complete it quickly. I'd rather you spent more time investing in being able to make more money later. Obviously, Zekris isn't making the best use of his territory with this single synthetic meat farm that's just bleeding all sorts of money. And a lot of other just weird choices in his territory. And just more transitions coming out for you that aren't really great. I feel like you've cycled in and out of water processors just far more times than you should have. Also, again, basalt platforms have really exhausted their use. Power has crept way up again. Would be a good place to move your food into, probably. Although it is on its way down, so probably missed that opportunity. Let's see. Yeah, 49 buildings already, 13 water processors. Just not really planning these transitions out properly. I mean, yes, you do want to shift buildings a lot, but please just get nanotech if you're going to be this hyperactive, or just try to plan around this a little better. I'm not great at that either myself. On IO, I commonly run into the problem where I have a bunch of buildings that are sustaining markets, but not really good. Anyway, we kind of see where this one's going at this point. Poor Sheep with 2 space elevators, just in a really great position. While you and Zekris are tied up in this fight, neither of you are really set up for a particularly long game. I mean, obviously you have the optimizations, but prices aren't good enough to really support that well.
The black market is
Another transition out of water processors.
to discover new resources.
Again, you still have the 4 farms. Definitely strikes me as a real problem. I feel like there's at least room to do something like optimize fuel a bunch, then build up a nice stockpile, then you can maybe move out of 2 of these. Then you can start moving to these markets without kind of running into other problems. Okay, that's nice, getting that aluminum. And I still wish you would optimize some other things. That's okay, you're well on your way to finishing off Zekris. Not sure what happens from there. Because theoretically should still be in a pretty strong position against poor Sheep with a full subsidiary. Unless Sophie's also pushing in on you, that shouldn't necessarily be a problem. And we see water doing that thing again. You see steel is now dead. Could pretty easily have moved into the electronics over here. And definitely move out of the basalt platforms in some class. A lot of those sorts of transitions are available. This cluster I feel like just hasn't been used well.
The engineers have advanced our production.
Getting pretty close to the buy now. Not be optimizing further, and you don't seem to be, so that's good.
Our methods continue to improve.
Okay. I think that is one other thing to pay attention to, somewhat. It's that you never really moved into oxygen in this game, which is fair as a scientist.
The black market is open for business.
But also means that that's going to be a big source of debt. Power was also a big problem, and now you're just kind of dead spiraling. That was another option for this cluster, just some nuclear. A lot of options. A lot of options. And you end up with this 100k there, 100 some odd k there. Not too much in oxygen, I guess. And at this point, you're barely outpacing Poor Sheep in overall income. Because base elevators, not amazing this game, but they are plenty good when prices on world aren't special. Poor Sheep also doing a nice job of using those hacks. I'm not sure when you started these transitions. I think you might have missed out on the sulfur frost warning there. And I think there were a lot of reasons to stick in some chems. Because chems are still amazing. Especially with your optimizations. Water was useful, but I don't think good enough. Yeah, and at this point you're making a lot of transitions here from your chems, from your oxygen, when there just is always the option to move things here instead. Going into more basalt, which I guess is fine now that uranium is spiked, but...
Optimization routines successful.
Man.
The engineers have advanced our production.
Steel. I mean, steel production is fine, but not if you're going to be auto-selling it. You were auto-selling steel for a very long time, and I think that did a lot to subsidize all the space elevator construction from Poor Sheep and Sophie.
Our methods continue to improve.
I think that might have been another thing in this game. Your debt is just insane. A lot of that made sense when you're pushing for the buy on Zekris after you bought Zekris. I guess Poor Sheep did start buying to you pretty soon. But I do think there was still room for you to pay off some of that debt before it really compounded to this level. Because, again, you are relying on the fact that you should have this nice advantage in income from the subsidiary. So you do want to push the game longer, you do want to not knock like $7 off your stock price every soul. It's not actually 7, is it? Let's see, we're talking about roughly a third, maybe like a bit more than a third, so 130k times 5, that's like 650. $7. Yeah, that's actually $7 off your stock price. The debt tick. But I digress. I'm also very confused about that transition out of aluminum. Aluminum was doing great work for you. Yeah, it just felt like a lot of transitions that weren't really working together properly. And that could have been managed better. Let's just take another look at how many transitions you ended up making. 71. It's just a ton. I think especially as a scientist, you shouldn't end up needing to make that many transitions. Kind of see where you and Sophie both end up making a ton of transitions and in and out of some really key markets that I think really could be been handled better. Hmm. Book the books. Claims. I guess when you're that deeply in D-Dead, you might as well do something, but maybe more cooked books earlier would have helped prevent some of the problems. It really felt like just a lot of consistent mismanagement of water and not being able to take advantage of something like chems as much as you could have. Or Sheep made a ton in glass. You could have contested that better as well. Again, understandable that things were difficult this game, but also power was a big deal for poor Sheep. Superconductor felt really weird at the time you picked it up. It ended up being helpful. Yeah, poor Sheep also picked up nanotech, which he didn't make that much use of, but he had very useful territory. He didn't need to use nanotech much. Which I think also says a lot about him being allowed to stay in some very strong markets, whereas I think you and Sophie were kind of jumping in and out. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about this one. Poor Sheep, space elevators, better tile management, and I think the timing of that fight as well.